Ever feel like you're just like constantly giving in a relationship and it's never enough? Like you're stuck
Yeah.
on this treadmill of someone else's needs. You're not alone. This deep dive is for you. We're going deep into the psychology behind why some people, I don't know about you, but like some people just drain the energy from a room and how others end up supplying that energy,
Right.
often without even realizing it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, actually. You know what we're talking about today? We're unpacking narcissistic supply and coercive control.
Ooh, yeah.
And these terms might sound kind of complex, but they describe some actually surprisingly common relationship patterns.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Narcissistic supply.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about someone who loves looking in the mirror.
Exactly. Yeah. Think of it more as like an intense need, right? For attention, admiration. They need even negativity sometimes.
Right.
It's about constantly seeking that validation to regulate a really fragile sense of self-worth.
So you're saying, like, imagine someone who feels empty inside,
Yes.
and they just try to fill that void with external validation.
100%. And then
Yeah.
imagine that need, that emptiness,
Yeah.
driving someone to manipulate others into providing that fuel. And that's where the coercive control comes in.
Okay.
It's the toolbox they use to get that narcissistic supply.
So it's less about vanity
Mhm.
and more about this, like, deep-seated need for control and validation from others.
You got it. And it's often like rooted in the narcissist's own insecurities and shame.
See, that's kind of a tough pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people, because we often think of narcissism as just being selfish,
Right.
or arrogant. But it sounds like there's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why it's so important to understand like these dynamics, because knowledge really is power in these situations. When you can name it, you can start to break free.
So how does this coercive control thing, how does it actually play out in real life? Give us some examples.
Okay. Think about those, grand romantic gestures
Oh, yeah.
at the beginning of a relationship, right?
Right.
Now, while those can be genuine,
Sure.
they can also be a tactic to like quickly create a sense of dependence
Mhm.
or a parent who uses financial support
Mhm.
to dictate, their adult child's career path.
So even actions that seem like loving or helpful on the surface could actually be a form of control.
That's exactly it.
That's a lot to process.
And that's what makes it so insidious. Many people don't even realize they're being manipulated, right? They just feel this constant pressure
Mhm.
to please or this fear of upsetting the other person.
And one of the most shocking things, I think, for me learning about all of this was that this dynamic can even happen between, like, a parent and a child.
Oh, absolutely.
In fact, our expert shared a story about a client who didn't realize they were trapped in this exact situation with their own parent for years.
Years. It's a great example of how these patterns can, they fly under the radar for so long. It wasn't until, the client started therapy that they began to recognize it was happening.
That's what makes this conversation so important, I think. But before we dive into how to spot these patterns, let's break down a key distinction. Overt versus covert narcissism.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
When we picture
Oh,
when
go.
we picture a narcissist, we often think of the overt type. Loud, arrogant, always needing to be the center of attention,
Yeah.
seeking validation through outward displays of superiority.
The classic "look at me, I'm amazing"
Yeah.
type.
Exactly, 100%. But then on the other hand, you have covert narcissists. These are the folks who operate much more subtly,
Okay.
using manipulation, guilt tripping, playing the victim
Right.
to get their needs met.
So the woe is me, I'm so fragile type.
Yes. And they can be just as controlling, just as damaging as overt narcissists. Maybe even more so because their tactics are often much harder to spot. Think of the parent who constantly reminds their adult child of all the sacrifices they've made.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Subtly guilting them into providing constant attention and care.
Oh, that's sneaky.
Yeah.
That's like they're wearing this mask, right?
Yeah.
This mask of vulnerability,
Right.
which makes it even harder to set boundaries. You don't want to seem uncaring or insensitive.
Exactly. And that's where understanding that concept of narcissistic supply becomes so crucial, because once you realize that someone's actions might be driven by this desperate need for validation, it can help you to detach from their tactics a little bit,
Yeah.
it's not really about you, it's about their own internal struggle.
Okay, so instead of taking their words and actions so personally,
Yes.
we can start to see them as almost like a reflection of their own insecurities.
Precisely. Yeah, it's like they're emotionally starving, and they'll use any means necessary to get fed.
Right.
So they might belittle your accomplishments in order to feel superior, or they might shower you with praise to get that hit of admiration. It's all about regulating their own self-esteem, often, unfortunately, at the expense of others.
So how can someone tell, like, if they're caught in this narcissistic supply, like,
Yeah.
dynamic?
Yeah.
What are some, like, red flags to watch out for?
Okay, so one major red flag is feeling constantly idealized or devalued.
Oh, wow.
Right. So narcissists often swing between these extremes. So they'll put you on a pedestal 1 minute
Mm-hmm.
and then make you feel worthless the next. It's a real emotional roller coaster that keeps you off balance.
So first you're amazing, then you can do no right. It's like they need to create that drama to feel something.
100%. And another red flag is like feeling like you're always walking on eggshells,
Yeah.
afraid to express your own needs or your own opinions for fear of like rocking the boat.
That sounds exhausting.
It is.
And definitely a recipe for, like, resentment building up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you find yourself constantly being manipulated
Oh, right.
or pressured into compliance or feeling like your boundaries are just being completely disregarded, those are huge warning signs.
It's like they, like, suck all the air out of the room,
Yes.
leaving no space for, like, your own needs or your own feelings.
Yeah.
So much for, like, a two-way street.
Right. Exactly. And it's important to remember, too, like, narcissistic supply can come in many forms, right?
Right.
It's not just about, like, compliments or praise. It can be anything that makes the narcissist feel powerful, in control, superior.
So even if it looks like they're being helpful
Yeah.
or supportive on the surface,
Yes.
it could be a way of, like, maintaining control.
Exactly. Imagine a parent who constantly reminds their adult child of all the sacrifices they've made for them, right?
Yeah.
Or a partner who uses money to control your decisions, often under the guise of, taking care of you.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about leverage and control.
Wow, this is getting pretty intense. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about what you can do if you recognize yourself in any of this. Because, like, once you see it, how do you actually start to, like, break free?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the truth is, it's not always easy, but the first step is always awareness.
Right.
So once you understand the dynamics at play, you can start to detach from their emotional hooks.
Easier said than done.
Right.
Especially if it's a family member
Yeah.
or a colleague or someone that you're, like, really close to.
Absolutely. It takes time and effort to unlearn those, like, ingrained patterns of relating, right? But it is possible. One powerful strategy is called gray rocking.
Gray rocking. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Okay, so think of it like becoming like emotionally unresponsive to the narcissist's attempts to get a reaction out of you. Okay, you essentially become a gray rock, neutral, boring, uninteresting. You don't engage in their drama and you don't feed their need for attention, whether it's positive or negative.
So you're basically, like, taking away their power source.
Yeah.
Starving the beast, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about starving the narcissist of the supply that they crave. It takes practice, and it's not always easy, but it can be like incredibly effective in creating some distance.
That makes so much sense. So instead of getting, like, sucked into their emotional, like, vortex,
Yeah.
you're creating this, like, force field of disinterest.
Precisely. And remember, gray rocking, it's not about like becoming cold or unfeeling, right? It's a way of protecting your own energy and your own well-being in a situation that just feels completely out of your control.
It's about, like, setting healthy boundaries and refusing to play their game. But it's not the only strategy, though, right?
You're right. You're right. Alongside gray rocking, there are other techniques that can be incredibly helpful, like learning to like identify and assert your own needs,
Right.
setting firm boundaries, and really importantly, like seeking support from a therapist or a counselor who understands narcissistic abuse.
Because let's be real, like, this can take a real toll
Oh, absolutely.
on your self-esteem, your sense of self.
It can be really damaging. And it's crucial to remember that you're not alone. And healing is possible. There are people who understand
Yeah.
and who can help you navigate this.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to emphasize that message, right? Like, you are not alone. And there's no shame in seeking help. If anything, it's a sign of strength, not weakness, to reach out for support.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's important to remember, too, that not everyone who maybe exhibits some narcissistic traits, right,
Yeah.
is a full-blown narcissist. I mean, we all have moments, right, of self-centeredness
Right,
or
right.
insecurity.
It's not about like diagnosing everyone in our lives,
Yeah.
but recognizing these patterns
Yeah.
can be helpful, I think, in any relationship
Yeah.
where you're feeling like manipulated or controlled, whether it's, with a romantic partner or a family member or a friend, even a colleague.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
These dynamics, they can show up in all sorts of relationships.
So to our listener, if any of this is resonating with you, know that you're not alone. This is actually surprisingly common, and talking about it openly is so crucial.
Yeah.
The more we like shine a light on these tactics,
Hmm.
I think the less power they have.
That's so true. Knowledge is power, right? And again, breaking free from these patterns, it's entirely possible. It takes time, it takes effort. But you deserve to have healthy and fulfilling relationships.
Yes, you do. This has been, I think, an incredibly eye-opening conversation. As we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listener with? What's that one, I don't know, nugget of wisdom, I guess, that they can carry with them?
Okay, well, how about this? How about a thought-provoking question for you to consider? The next time that you are feeling confused or drained, right,
Yeah.
by someone's behavior, ask yourself, what need are they trying to get met here? Could it be validation, control, a sense of superiority? And this shift in perspective, I think, this curiosity rather than judgment can be incredibly empowering. It allows you to see the situation with more clarity and more compassion for yourself and for the other person.
Wow, that's really powerful. And it's not about excusing their behavior, but understand the motivation behind it might just, I don't know, might help us just detach from it a little bit
Yeah.
and protect our own well-being.
Exactly. Exactly. Understanding, not necessarily condoning.
I love that. And it's such a great note to end on. Understanding so we can start taking back our power. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. To our listener, we hope this knowledge empowers you to navigate all your relationships with more awareness and self-compassion.
Here.
And remember, if any of this resonated with you, or if you're looking for support, please reach out to a qualified therapist or counselor. You don't have to go through this alone. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and take good care of yourselves.